So first speaker will be Rainer Späh. He is also CTO at Siemens, but in the infrastructure and cities area or department. So
sector, it's called sector. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, also a warm welcome from my side. It's a pleasure to be here today and to speak a little about infrastructure and cities, even if we have a very short time to go. Of course, as you may know, we will be reorganized by October 1st, but nevertheless, whatever we are talking and presenting today, what I'm saying, will be also because we are talking about the future and we are talking about market opportunities. And of course, they will not disappear. They will still be a challenge. And this is what I will address in my presentation. Before I start talking about solutions, just to give you an idea what is driving us in the company. Of course, we have major developments identified and which are also part of our vision. And these are the mega trends, what were identified already years ago. What we discussed today, or what is an impact for my presentation, is first the demographic change. I think also, Cord, you will talk about this a little bit, because it also impacts, of course, the healthcare business of Siemens. But nevertheless, urbanization, I think it's the major trend for us. So many people, you will see this in the next slide, are going to cities. So we have an increase of people living in cities of 150,000 people every day. It's not just people moving into cities, it's still also the birth rates, which increases the population in cities, but this is really the impact. Climate change, we had a not that good summer. I don't know how it was in Denmark. I think it was much better than it was down here. But even for you, this might be already an indication that we are going to have some kind of a climate change, of course. And globalization, I think that's also a matter of fact that we have to look to new players in the market. Well, there are the BRICS countries, which are already known, but there are also others coming. And I think it's going faster than what we believe. So it's said that China outruns the US in GDP in the year 2040. Maybe this will happen already in 2030. This depends a little bit what the development will be. So if you took a closer look to cities, of course, the population was the year 2009, that the first time more people live in cities than live outside cities. And this number is still increasing. So what we expect is that we would have in the year 2030 something between 3.5 and 4.7 billion people on the Earth. But nevertheless, the Club of Rome was saying that to the year 2052, we will not have an unlimited increase of population on the world, because there will be the top around 45 or something, around 9 or 10. It will not reach really 10 billion, depending a little bit on the developing and the emerging countries, because what we will see there is also the phenomena of DICs, double income, no kids. This is coming also, and this, of course, is decreasing the birth rate. So we will have really a top level by the year 2040, 2045. Nevertheless, the interesting point is that 50% of the global GDP is produced in 600 cities. And these 600 cities, we are not talking just about the big ones, the Shanghais, the Beijings, the Mexico cities, and so, but in the future, we are talking much more on middleweight cities like the Bangalores, which have today about 8 million. They will go up to 50. There are a lot of cities which we do not know in China, around 3.5 million, which go up to 10 million or so. But this is really where the major growth comes from. If we look to the environment, and this is also the impact from cities, of course, is that the cities still need 2/3 of the world's energy. Interesting point. Less, just approximately 50%, but 2/3 of the energy, 60% of drinking water, and it's responsible for more than 70% of the CO2 emissions. And this is really where we have to do something. We have to counteract on just to save Mother Earth. On the other side, if we look to the existing big ones, they have certain requirements, which we have to reflect also on a long-term perspective and in developing our portfolio. And this is the first one, is efficient transportation system. Normally, we are talking about people, and you will see also on my next slide, I will start talking about people transportation. But it's also important to talk about logistics and goods, what's happening there. Then reliable, efficient supply of energy is not just for the industry, but it's also for the people living in cities. It's important there. Low emissions, water usage, just to address this as a matter of the environment. And what, last but not least, what's all for us important is that we have a comfort life quality and security. Security is not an issue normally in Europe, or at least not in Germany, not in Denmark. But if you go other parts of the world, security is the most important issue for some people to live, to be safe if they are going across the city. At the end of the day, and this is the most important statement here on the right-hand side, is that all the cities around the world are competing to each other. This is also important. So Copenhagen is one of the famous cities. If we look always of the ratings in the world, you see that Copenhagen is almost on the top 3, top 5 on the worldwide base. If you go to Europe, you are competing with Vienna if you are the number 1 or number 2. So Zurich is also in this game. But well, at the end of the day, you compete to other cities in terms to get people here, to get industry settled, and just to run the business, of course. So if we talk about a smart city, it's always important in the beginning just to have a definition of a smart city. And if you talk to 10 people, at the end of the day, we'll have 11 definitions, of course. So I took another one, so we get now the 12th one. And I took this out of a definition which was done, the basic by ISO, because there is already standardization going on in the world, which started in the International Standardization Organization, ISO. Now IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, is also going to standardize something on the cities. So this was taken from ISO and is saying that a smart city applies state-of-the-art solutions enabled and improved by ICT, information and communication technology. And this is the unchanged part, but now for the sake of the citizens and the visitors. So the ISO standard, the ISO definition is just saying people, but I think we have to distinguish between a citizen and a visitor, because both being in the city have different requirements, whatever is provided by the city to them. The business is totally missing in the ISO definition, but the administration as well as the environment, they are also the major impact what ISO says on a smart city in the future. So if you look how architecture from a hardware or a cyber physical system perspective could look like, this is really just an overview, just an idea. Because today we are very strong, and I think you saw this by Dieter's presentation also, that we have addressed all these different industries by process automation systems. If we're talking about electricity, gas, water, heat and cool. If we have rail and road, you will see an example a little bit later, as well as if we talk about smart buildings or buildings, BMS and safety and security. So these remain also in the future. They may become smarter. They may become much more sensor data. So data handling might be a big issue here. But then, of course, what we see in the future is that we get two different kinds of integration levels in a city. The first one is just to optimize energy in principle. So we are not just talking plain electricity. So power to gas, I think, is the most prominent area where we talk about. But also we have some impact in electricity, power to heat, for instance, but also the impact how electricity can be used to clear water or to provide fresh water, and we have to find some synergies on that. And this will be done on the first integration level, which is called here just utilities. We have similar approaches where we can have a combination, a smart combination of rail and road, if we're talking about mobility. Could also be the transportation of people and goods is another optimization, which will be done on mobility. And buildings, of course, is always that we have the building management system and we have the safety and security management in the building. And this is also a smart combination. There could be others added, also healthcare and e-government. It's not complete, but just to give you an idea, this is what the first integration level is. The second one is on what we call city-wide solutions. This is going across these major domains here. And the result of this second integration are different information channels, which are going back to for whom we are doing all these things in a smart city. That's the citizens and the visitors, might be the mobile applications. You will see one in a minute. For the administration, normally people like the mayors, they're asking for city dashboards. They would like to get an overview, what's going on in their city. And of course, environment, for instance, environmental reporting. This is where the Chinese people now start talking about to their quarters in the big cities and have detailed reporting on figures and on pollution, for instance. Interesting, of course, there are different enabling technologies. It was said in the definition of a smart city that we are talking about ICT, information and communication technologies. So connectivity, of course, is a major part because each and everybody has to talk to each other. So connectivity is key. But also from the Siemens point of view, automation and SCADA systems are the backbone of such an architecture. And this is what the importance for us is. If we look now to applications, the first one I would like to speak on is what's called the integrated mobility platform. So it's not longer just to ride a car, to ride a bike, but the problem is just to get from A to B in a hassle-free manner, hopefully in a smarter way. And this is what this integrated mobility platform is about. So it's about personal mobility. It's an app which is driven by an application running on servers and comprising different aspects of mobility. First, it's a public urban transport system. So the pilot project of this is in Berlin, where we are talking about either the streetcars, if we're talking about undergrounds, if we're talking about buses. The second one is on individual mobility, which is part of this integrated mobility platform, talking about e-cars and e-bikes. We're not just talking cars, but e-cars and e-bikes, of course. And of course, another major thing, car sharing solutions. This is one thing which is coming up, of course, in the future. Just read a serious investigation in the US where they gained their first experiences with shared cars. And this was done in Portland and in San Diego and other cities. Do you have an idea how many private-owned cars can be replaced by one shared car? What the number was? Any guesses? 10? Okay, they say, well, I don't believe that, but this was really a serious investigation. 32. So 32. Believe what this would mean for the industry. Dieter, this is a bad time. Of course, the industry will shrink to less than 4% of today's volume if this happens. So even if we say it's just 15%, it will go down to 8%. But on the other side, you will see later an example. If we consider really that one shared car can replace 15 others, we get a perfect solution for parking problems in cities. Because if we just put 100 shared cars in a city, then we can just replace 1,300 or 1,400 different private-owned cars. They are gone in the city, and we have solved the problem. We have solved the problem from the environmental impact, and we have to solve the problem from the parking lots, of course. This is really interesting. So, but car-sharing solutions is also part of it. And of course, we have also additional service like access to parking, where to leave the car, and something like that. This is done by a platform, an ICT platform, which has a user interface on an app. And of course, it's easy to deal with. It's real-time information. You get the reservation, you get the ticketing, everything. But right now, this is just the pre-trip service. So you say you would like to go from A to B. You get an intermodal ticket, and then you are on the way. And of course, hopefully you get there in time and hassle-free. What we expect in the future we will have so-called on-trip services. So if there is a traffic jam popping up during on the trip, you get automatically detoured. If you get into a building, we will get Galileo as the European GPS system, which allows also indoor navigation. If you have ever been at Central Station in Berlin, it's a huge railway station. You can also have some guidance for how to get from platform A to platform B indoor. This will be added. And of course, we will have a different payment. It will be pay-as-you-go payment. So you do not pay your ticket up front, but you pay whenever you are going into the next stage, using the next service. This will be some additional things. Next one, I said already in parking. This is what we have also now pilot. So we are using light poles here as a base for a lot of sensors, which are going either radar or going with infrared, and just looking to the street, indicating if there is a free space or not. It's also integrated that we have the billing information, and also the ticketing here is integrated. Everything is going up to a centralized server, which deals also with the public parking spaces. So this is really easy, that if somebody is going into a city, that he can easily find, or hopefully find, a free parking lot, and in time, out of one system. This is one of the projects we are discussing right now with Munich, for instance. The next one, also interesting on e-mobility. Well, to say here is, one fits all doesn't mean anything to the e-mobility, because we have different approaches. Well, first of all, we have to consider that we have private cars, and that we have trucks, of course, which makes a major difference. But even if we are talking about trucks, this is the heavy load trucking. We have also lightweight, and we have mid-weight truckings, which could be solved similar to what we are doing with our private cars. So we have, or we might have in the future, cars based on batteries, which are used for commuting, going in and out the city, which can also deliver energy. Because not all the energy is used just to get to your office in the morning or to the university, because you can use this energy over the day. And hopefully at night, almost little is left to get home again. That's of course important. But this could also be applied to lightweight trucking, for instance, the same principle, if you just deliver the last mile. The other one, long range, could be on hydrogen. This is on fuel cells and hydrogen. This is an S-Class Mercedes, which was presented 3 years back on Frankfurt Motor Show, which was not just which was a driving prototype on a fuel cell. Well, the major problem is just storing the hydrogen of today. They're considering different things like MOFs, metallic organic frameworks, which might be a appropriate solution, but still a way to go because it's a brand new technology. If we talk about heavy load trucking, we have our example of an e-highway. And this is a test drive we have for northeast of Berlin, 2 kilometers on an old airport, where we are using right now Mercedes trucks. We will get now also a Scania truck there, because we have a first contract with Scania, or which is the Mack truck, because the Freightliners are the Mercedes in the US, the Mack trucks are the Scania trucks in the US. And we got a first pilot project at the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach to use this technology, starting next year in July. You see, it's like looking like the old buses driving in the cities, or like a train going on a conduct line. It's an electric-driven truck, which is a hybrid concept. So the diesel engine, which is on board, can drive the system off system, but then the diesel engine just generates via a generator power, and then it can drive there. I have to speed up a little bit. Okay. Now looking for a little bit into the energy part, we have good old rules in automation system, how we structure an automation system. And this is the first one, that the optimal structure is achieved when we can see out of the control system structure, the system structure of the control process. The first one. And the second one is that information should be processed on the lowest possible level ever, not shifted up, because in the upper levels it will become really a capacity problem at the end of the day. This is the rule. So if we apply this to our today's world, or what we think the energy world will be in about 20 years from now, maybe 15 years, maybe it's going even faster, then we all agree that we have much more, and we mentioned this before, more decentralized and smaller units. But if we think about how we control it, we are still thinking in the old way. We think we have to do it centralized, and this, of course, is totally in contradiction with what I said before, what we are going to do in automation systems. So if we would like to change this a little bit, we have to find a new paradigm. It's saying that we set power generation and consumption on the lowest possible power level, which means either residential home, or could be the area of a remote of a small transformer or whatever. I wouldn't like to explain this in detail, because I think those were there last year. I said something about this. But out of this, we can generate, or we can define a cellular concept, which comprises always generation, load, and storage. And of course, we need some controls, which makes it a very robust system. And just with a few information to be exchanged, either if you use active or active power, for instance, then you have just to provide one figure for the next dispatching period. The same could be also on transparent power. If you look what a building can contribute now to this new approach, then of course we can see that smart buildings and a smart grid can play an important role, because they can provide all the flexibility on loads, or if they have an eigengeneration, also on the generation, what they can do there. And of course, everything will be, this is the idea today, will be driven by economics. So they have to have different price tags, dynamic price tags, and they react. There are different schemes which we can discuss afterwards, but this is the idea behind. And we are talking also about virtual power plants, we are talking about microgrids, but whenever a smart building or a smart campus could be a microgrid in itself, and then being organized and driven by signals coming from the outside. Well, if you look again to transportation, we see still a lot of traffic jam. Well, years ago, we introduced flexible working hours, and the flexible working hours, well, could counteract on a problem, because not everybody was starting at 7, so we got a little bit more flexibility on that. But in principle, we did not improve the infrastructure, so we got also traffic jams of today. So how we can counteract on this, and this is what I call the Citizen 3.0. The Citizen 3.0, so Dieter, you see, we are not on 4.0. The Citizen, we are 3.0. So human beings have a longer history and need much more time, so we are still on 3.0. But what the Citizen 3.0 is, these are people, citizens, who actively contribute to their city. This is the point. So, and if they would like to do this, well, the idea is that they use what I call trusted social networks. Because if you go to Facebook, you will not find more lies than in Facebook, of course. And you can't really arrange your daily life if you are just trust on Facebook. So this is why I say we have to have some trusted social networks. This is where you can believe or you can trust really the information you get. If you get some information when to drive to work in the morning, then of course this will tell you what will be the best choice for you or for the kids to get to school. Last point is we started with the architecture. We saw these different verticals today. An interesting approach of today is, which goes also a little bit along to have an easier interaction with the citizens, is to change from vertical to horizontal organization schemes. And this idea is not brand new, but today it's driven out of China, because the Chinese people say, we can't really organize a big city like Shanghai or Beijing in a way we did it in the past. So their idea is to split it up in smaller quarters. Quarters means 350 to 500,000 people. That's smaller. This looks like villages from the Indian perspective. Yeah? 500,000 people, but then they are autonomous cells. It's not just about what I presented on electricity, but it's a whole city or a part of a city which comes with a vertical organization scheme on customer interface, grids, controls, and optimization. This gives a lot of more flexibility if we're talking about multimodal energy systems, multimodal transportation system, but it's also more cost effective and it saves costs. It can be done the same at lower costs. So, well, just to summarize everything, the city of tomorrow is where we have the mechanism of the picture of the future, and this shows a little bit in a nutshell what are the main parts of it. So we talked about grids talking to buildings, intermodal transportation, decentralized energy storage, intelligent buildings, power coming from renewables, and urban and interurban mobility. But the most important point is IT connects the parts, and this is where the major efforts have to be spent in the future just to make it happen and to counteract and to manage the more complex world. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. And I would be so happy if you could help me and probably the rest here with our parking problems here in Copenhagen.